Hello everybody and welcome to Adobe Live. We'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of which we are streaming and creating today and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. My name is Flynn. I'm delighted to be hosting today because I am joined by none other than Kris Andrew Small. Hey Kris.
Hey man, how you doing?
I'm excited. I'm good. I had a great time yesterday. It was awesome sitting down and chatting with you.
It went really quick, didn't it?
It
always
did.
does.
It always does. It always does. It was fantastic. If you missed it, don't worry. This is kind of a separate thing. We're going to do another live stream today, and we're going to jump into a couple of bits of process. Kris is going to create some stuff live for us, which is going to be really exciting. And there was just another project that I really wanted to find a little bit more about from Kris. We didn't have time yesterday, so we thought we'd kick off with that. Kris, you're cool with that?
Sure. Yeah. Which project do you want to see?
So it turns out that there was two I wanted to talk about, and they're actually kind of the same project, which was the Adidas project. And I also really wanted to hear you talk a little bit about, I noticed that Ronaldo was wearing like a design from a campaign you're involved in. And,
who's Ronaldo?
Exactly, right? So even if you don't follow football, everyone knows Ronaldo. Superstar shell toes are my favorite shoe. So let's walk that back a little bit for people that haven't seen the visuals and everything. I'll bring that up now so we can see your screen. Can you tell us about this project? Because it's this global, massive, awesome project.
Yeah, it was really wild. It's almost 2 years ago now, which, if I think about it, it still feels like it was really, really soon, because I think it was a really big part of my life. It was a really big part of my career. It kind of set the bar pretty high. I feel for following projects.
Yeah, where do you go from there?
Yeah, it was kind of, and it really was a dream. I've loved sneakers since I was really young. So to get a chance to design, I've even lost count. I think in the end it was 11 pairs, because there was kind of a few different variations, 40 pieces of apparel. It was just such a kind of dream project, and it went on for so long that it almost felt like I had a full-time job, which for a freelance artist is a very strange kind of feeling to have. But yeah, it was really wild, and it was for the Pride collection, so it kind of had a deeper meaning. Obviously, as a queer artist, I really wanted to represent that, and it was kind of wild, because in the beginning I was really intimidated by the thought that I had to visually represent an entire community, and then I realized all I can do is I think I've educated myself pretty well on the queer community, and part of it I understand within that community there's a million different variations, and no one person on the planet can understand all of that. So all I can do is kind of represent my view on that. And I think it was kind of cool, I think from both angles. One of the points was to kind of, from a visual aspect, make it look not like a Pride collection.
Yeah.
Not because I think that's a bad thing in any way. I just think a lot of Pride things can feel really temporary. They're relevant for the time, and then they kind of get washed away. And I wanted this to feel like, if you know this is a Pride collection, which obviously people did because it was around the time of Pride and everything, they would know it's a Pride collection. But if you just saw it on the street 3 weeks later or whatever, you just go, oh, that's cool.
That's
so
really
that from and so I really I don't love using the rainbow in anything kind of visually queer, so I feel like I just reinterpreted it and made my own version of it using the same kind of colors, but just expanding it into a different way. And create. And then I guess obviously from more of a concept point of view, I wanted to kind of throw back a little bit to all the things that I've looked back in queer history that I think have kind of got us to where we are now, and then kind of visualize where I feel, or what I feel about that, and then kind of reminding people that there's still over 100 countries on the planet that it's not legal, and just raising awareness of the fact that we have come far in some places in the world, and we've still got a long way to go. So from both sides, I kind of wanted to push the envelope, and I think I'm always trying to do that with my work, to progress things, or to change things, and to just flip the way that things should be made. But it was cool. I went over to the States the photo here, if you can see it, is the store in Soho in New York. And it was just like the first, I remember getting out of the subway and just seeing this like 80-meter long billboard with my collection on it. And this was like the first time I'd seen it in real life kind of
Must
thing.
have been wild.
It was really wild. And I kind of like, I remember when I was in New York for 2 weeks and like I kept going to the store and I kept kind of like having meetings and it just kept coming up. It was like a huge, like thing. I was there for that. So like kind of consumed my life for 2 weeks. And then I remember when I left, I went down the same subway stair and I looked at it and I was like, that's not the last time you're going to do that. Like you are going to do something better. So now I'm like, I've got to do it again, or I've got to do something better. So
like manifesting, like
the next step. But yeah, it's a high bar. This is like a block away from my agent's office in New York, and I just signed with them. So this was like such a flex.
Oh, so they would have loved that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, that's my work right there.
Yeah. Can I tell you my little very selfish thing about it is we had you for Adobe Max, and you did this great talk with us. I think it was the first time we did it. It was post-pandemic. It was like 2020, and I somehow discovered you, even though you're in the backyard and we have like 1,000 friends in common. We never crossed paths. I was like, this guy's work is amazing. He's so interesting, and we had such a great time, even though we didn't meet, working on that, and it was so amazing. And then within like the next year, I had other people from Adobe just being like, hey, this guy who did like, he's like in New York, like people were talking about this campaign, and it was very nice. So I did a little bit of that's right. Yeah, there's some amazing artists here. It was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I've lived around the world, but I always think I can't see. I just really like living in Sydney. I think it's one of the most underrated, overrated cities on the planet in a way. And I think because I travel a lot, it's always nice to come back here. But yeah, it is. I'm really proud of this project, and I think I've worked really hard in my career in general, but with this particular project, I worked so hard and so long that I can really. I mean, I can't fully own it because it was also obviously the team at Adidas, depending where you're on the planet. Like the credit to them, it's half to them, like they're technical geniuses, and it was obviously wild to work with them, but my name's on it at the end of the day, so I can claim it a little bit more, I guess. But I guess their name's on it too, to be honest. But yeah, it was very much a team effort, and I'm very, very grateful for. There's too many people to thank there, really. But it was a wild project. It was 2 years, and it was really amazing. But it kind of the Ronaldo thing you're talking about, that kind of capped it off, because it came out in May, and I think this happened I know nothing about football, so I'm not going to pretend. I assume whenever this season kicked off was the start of one of the seasons that they do. I think this is in September-ish, around that time anyway. And so it was kind of like, I feel like it was simmering down and stuff. And this kind of happened. And it was the first time a pro team had worn a Pride jersey ever. So that was so that was like a big, I guess, moment. Yeah. I think on the pitch, I think they'd worn it in, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. I think some of the teams had worn it in training, but no one had worn it as the warm-up jersey. So that was really cool. And obviously, lots of amazing players wore it. It's just obviously most people know Ronaldo. Like my mom knows who Ronaldo is.
Exactly.
So it's like the easiest one to kind of latch onto. But it's very surreal, I have to say. Like looking at this photo, it's hard to gauge. Like that's the most famous footballer on the planet. That's my work.
Yeah, that started on your laptop, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like that's the weirdest thing. Like that was, I was making that in a room with no one else for months. No one saw it. I couldn't show anyone. I wasn't allowed to talk about it. So to go from that to like that is that's a lot for someone's brain to kind of comprehend, I think. So
it's kind of good that it was quite a long project, and it's been a bit of time now, because now you got some perspective you can kind of interpret.
And I really enjoyed going to America, and I met everyone from Adidas. When I say America and then Adidas, because you say Adidas there, and I'm always trying to switch between them. But it felt really real when I was there, and because it came out in Australia as well, which is obviously super exciting. But something about, because I think I worked with the American team, and in New York, you just think it's like the center of the world, whether it is or isn't. I just was like, I'm in the center of the world, and my work's everywhere. Like, it was really, the first time I walked into the store and there was like a trans kid like trying on a pair of sneakers and looked so happy, and I was like, that's what it was made for. And that's really exciting. So I think, it was a wild, exciting, amazing project on so many levels. Last thing I'll say is I was on a friend's website the other day and I saw that they'd done an Adidas sneaker, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. And it was from 10 years ago. But I was like, it's still cool because it was a superstar. Like, as we were talking about yesterday, like, it's such an iconic shoe that lasts forever. I was like, that's so cool. That's 10 years old and that still feels fresh.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm going to be living on the fumes of this in another decade.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Oh,
Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, it's such an amazing project. And I know that you actually have, we'll move on, we'll create some stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
But you have one of the shoes behind you. Can we?
I do, yeah. I don't know if you can see it. I got them all like put into kind of like plastic boxes.
Can we do a quick show and tell?
Sure, yeah, sure.
Yes.
I think this is the last one. So they're different. They're the same, but they're different. If that makes sense.
Look at that.
So they're kind of flipped, but
how cool is that?
Yeah, they're very cool. They're embroidered and screen printed, and the inside's all different. And
that's amazing. Yeah,
I think this is my favorite one. I mean, it changes, but I know you're a fan of the Superstar.
Yeah,
so it's a cool.
It's so cool.
I hope Missy Elliott wears a pair someday.
Is that like a goal?
Well, I always think of superstars, and I think of like Missy Elliott wearing the tracksuit and the Superstars.
Yeah, I always just think of Run.
Well, that too, yeah.
Very, very cool. Yeah, so all this was, created by you in your studio on your laptop. We did a little bit of kind of playing around yesterday as well to some of your art styles, but we thought today we might do a little bit more if you're up for it.
Sure, I think so. I think if anyone saw it yesterday, we were kind of switching between like a million different things, but I think today will just be a bit more I guess like a little more focused on one, or kind of like, I think I never make one of anything because there's always a few variants. So I think we'll try and kind of focus on making one thing, but then there'll be 3 variants. So as always, like, this is something I made a little while ago. I think I very rarely start like this, like with a blank canvas. I always have, I don't know what the first file ever was, but I always open like an old file. I think when I start something, like it's weird to start from scratch.
Do you ever accidentally like save over that file, or?
No, I'll save a new one, like,
for
sure.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, maybe like I'll just take my favorite gradient from this one, which is maybe that one, and then it already is that one. Cool. But it's just I'm like, okay, I've that exists in the world, but I can make a new one. So I'll just make kind of a new, I guess, pattern with it, and maybe I'll bring in some circles or something. So it's like, again, it's kind of, I don't know. My work is like a weird, I don't have a process. I don't really ever know how an artist can have a process in a way. Like, I think you're always learning that process in a way. And
that's quite freeing for a lot of designers, right? Like,
yeah,
we were talking
I think
a little
so.
bit about it the other day. I was talking kind of about, tends to be an approach, like a formula, a process, but coming at it from an artistic point of view, if you've developed your style, which is something we could probably talk a bit more about today as well, where people come to you for your style. If this is, the way you do it, that's kind of what you're getting. Yeah.
And I guess like there's always, I think we were talking about it yesterday, you always have that like decision thing in your brain that's like, you're making decisions based on like a million things that have happened to you in life. And that's kind of like what informs every decision. And then I think that's how you can work really fast, or that's how I can work really fast rather, because I'm like, I have that in my brain. So when it comes to making a decision, I don't think very long about it, because I just think like if it's really hard to make a decision, you may as well just move on to the next thing and come back to it, as opposed to like just sitting there waiting to hope that you might come up with something. Because in my experience, it's pretty rare that if you don't come up with it pretty quickly, I'm just not so sure. So anyway, so as you can see, like that was something from a while ago, and then now I've just made like a new version of it that's like, I guess, using the same colors or my favorite gradient from it. And that's kind of normally how it starts. I mean, realistically, I would probably then make another 3 of these, but for argument's sake, let's just take this one. And then again, it's like, okay, well, maybe it's laziness. I'm just realizing now to like not start a new.
We're going very introspective now.
Yeah,
I'm
like,
to say this out loud.
Yeah, maybe I'm just really lazy. But it's like, okay, well, this also already exists. This is so I'll bring in this gradient I've already made. I'll bring into it. I've got a gradient map on top of everything. Just I love gradient maps. So I'm going to use a gradient map on this one. It's such a, I mean, I always think the simplest things in Adobe are the best things. Like I use the most like basic Adobe tools. I guess using GenFill now, like that's a more advanced tool, but for the most part I'm using, Liquify and all of these things that like I think are quite basic. But yeah, again, it's like now I've got this in here. I'm like, okay, I've already edited it, but like what else can I do? I duplicate everything. Like that's just what I do, because I'm like, if you lose it, then you've still got the other one, so I'll just like play around and distort it a little bit. Now we've got this gradient that I like. It's really like play, that's why I know we talked about it yesterday, how I guess I've got like different parts of my career. Like I've got typography, collage, and then these textual ones. And I always think these are my favorite because these are really like super playful. And it's like, I'm thinking now because I'm talking to you, but if I wasn't, I would just be like spaced out, probably drooling on my computer. So it's like, it's kind of really therapeutic in a way.
And do you listen to music? Are you like heavily influenced by music?
Yeah.
In your creation?
Yeah, for sure. I love music. I think I would have loved to have been a musician. I had a band for a little while, but I just don't think didn't have what it took to be a pop star, sadly. So I got stuck being an artist.
It was either that or was it a bean farmer?
A travesty.
I think it was a bean farmer.
No, yeah, I was also going to live in the jungle. Yeah, that was plan B. Yeah. So pop star didn't work out, artist worked out, and plan C was live in the jungle. So but yeah, so see, now we've got this one. So music, I do listen to music when I work, for sure. It depends. I either listen to music or I just have to sit in silence. It depends if I'm feeling like particularly sensitive or not. But I also I listen to like trashy pop. No, not trashy. I listen to good, I think, pop music in the studio, because I think I don't like to be overstimulated almost by the music I'm listening to. So if I'm just listening to like Ariana Grande, like it doesn't offend me, if that makes any sense. Like it's just kind of vibe in the background basically. But it depends. I feel like I'm more with my music choice when I listen at home or I listen in the car. Like I'm definitely more alternative, but I think in the studio I'm pretty cheesy, unless I have like someone coming to the studio, and then of course I put on my like very trendy very like trendy playlist. So they're like, think I'm a bit cooler.
Yeah. You've got like, the clients are coming in.
Yeah. Put on like whatever. But so again, like I'm not really thinking about anything when I do these, because I think as well, again, we talked about it yesterday, but like I think with the other work, I'm always kind of trying to make a statement or like say something. And I think with this, the point of it is to not, like, it's to just be really visual and really playful and like experiment on the side of my brain that's just like a creative, not like an artist who wants to like speak about the world and things like that. So so then like that, that's the gradient. I played around with a bit. We still got the old gradient in the background. These are some assets that I stole from something. I always kind of probably use the same colors and the same assets and stuff because of this reason. Like I've got these characters and things. Actually, maybe I'll bring one in if I can find one quickly. Dudes too. So I've been playing around with like 3D in Illustrator, which is very cool. So maybe I'll bring one of these. Again, like I just go between
3D
software
stuff in Illustrator all the time.
It's so cool. I'm like obsessed with it. Like I think it's really good for my characters. Like I've loved making. I always thought that they would eventually become 3D. So I've really enjoyed like just playing them and making them a bit 3D kind of thing. But yeah, I think it's cool. So yeah, I think I sometimes bring typography into these, but I try and keep them like mainly textural and 2D and kind of whatever. And I might try and play with the that's what I was going to bring a photo in, because that's always a fun time. Where are my photos that I had?
These photos
there?
That you've taken?
Some photos. Yeah, like photos I take on. I always take photos on trips, so that's something from yesterday. I love this photo of these are the mountains in Nevada. I loved the Nevada desert so much, so I bring in those, and then see now we've got like another element. I always think the sky is the best gradient. Like you can't compete with the sky. It wins all of the gradient awards, I think. So, but I might give this one a bit of a different play. Let's see where I can get it to. You just play. Like gradients can be horrible or they can be the best thing ever, but you won't know until you like basically it's like a guessing game really, isn't it? But
What's your approach? There's a lot of colors in that gradient, so like what's your approach to like where do you get these original colors from? Is that just pulled from what's being created here, or I saw someone the other day that they were like, stick to these hues only if you don't want it to look like mud. Like, do you have a kind of approach to creating gradients?
these are my rules that I don't like to obey, because I just think that's so. If I'm sitting here being like, I can't use this color, I can't use this color, I can't use this color, like that's so annoying. Whereas now I'm like, I'll just use whatever I want. I think I'm always going for contrast. So it's like the colors are irrelevant in a way. Like I like bright colors, so I naturally am drawn to them and will use them. But someone else is, maybe they like a more kind of like earthy tone. So I guess it's like a personal, like my favorite color is yellow because I had yellow curtains in my bedroom when I was a kid. And like whether yellow is actually my favorite color or that's just like how my brain's been wired because of those curtains, we'll never know. So I think, you know, you've also got to like take into that into account. But I'm going to try a little bit with the gen fill thing now, just to see. It's kind of cool to add stuff. Let's see what we can do. As I said yesterday, it always starts with chrome, I think. Chrome and neon. So like chrome, sculpture.
Right. It's your go-to
in the desert
prompt at the moment.
Well, yeah, I think it's how I start the material. Chrome, sculpture folding in the desert with neon lights on it. Yeah, I just think you get such a cool texture then, you know. So let's see what it makes. You never know. It's hit or miss, but I do find I feel like the gem fill tool works really well when it's got a natural background. I feel like that's when I get, for me anyway, that's when I find I get the best results. My internet is a bit laggy, so it can see, that's fun.
Yeah, we've got a slight delay. We can see.
Just got like these weird shapes.
We do have a bit of a delay, but we're all good.
Okay, cool. So now I've got like this weird shape.
This is like crazy 3D sculpture.
Which is like, yeah. So I don't, again, I like to then edit it more because I just think, you know, then I can own it, you know. If everything's been edited and drawn into my world and brought into my colors and played with, it's mine then, you know, like I no one else can claim it. So I always try and do that. But I think as well, something with Chrome and gradient maps works really well. So I also like that I didn't realize initially that there's like different ones you can do, which is cool to do once you've like added effect to it, because then you just get this weird I don't know, like my friend was using AI the other day and he's like trying to put like a puppy into a background and I was like, man, what are you doing? Like make something weird. But I guess we're all different, you know. That has its place as well. So yeah, I think now it's really just like collaging all these bits together and finding a way that they can kind of work together, you know. But see how it's like feels very free, I think. So it's a real mixture of like old things I've made, things I've just made now, the characters that I just like. It's like my logos that I'm always putting into everything. Like there's, I'm not sure I like this effect. I think I
And your
like this
logo
sculpture.
dude has a name, don't they?
They all have names,
They all have
but
names.
this one actually doesn't. So we could maybe name it now. But yeah, the main one is called Klaus, and it's a silly story. Like I used to have lorikeets, like rainbow lorikeets, parrots, come to my one of my old houses, and I would feed them. I just used to like never think it was the same bird. I thought it was several different birds. My friend came to visit from Germany, and he was like, "Oh, we should name them." And he was like, "Oh, let's name like a parrot. This like parrot that seems to come every day. He's like, let's call him Wolfgang." And I just thought it was so funny to name like this like tropical bird with like this very German name.
Yeah.
And I always think about that. So then when it came to like naming my characters, mainly because I just like, you know, you go to save out the file, and I was like, what am I gonna like? It obviously needs to have a name,
Right.
so I would just name it. I just started naming them, so they all have like kind of very like masculine German names, which is like kind of off-brand for me, but then also like kind of hilarious, I think. So yeah, this one I think it doesn't have a name. I'm just gonna like, okay, so I get to a point where I'm like, I think it looks cool, so I'm going to just save that, and then I'm going to duplicate it because I don't want to not ruin it, but like I think otherwise we'll just never be done. So let's make a new one. But I have too many layers.
Would you be open for chat to throwing some ideas in chat?
It always takes a bit long. Yes, please do. I mean, yeah, if it could be a bit masculine German name, that would be great. But German? You know, they all
do that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, so names we've got so far is Wolfgang, Ziggy, Klaus. I mean, the point of them as well is they have no gender. Like they're not gendered. They're cartoon characters. You know, so it's like it's irrelevant what the name is. But I think a funny German name is a good one. Not funny, just like a good classic German name goes well with them.
Right.
Or French, maybe. What is it? I'm busy in Photoshop.
Oh, I went Kurt Wagner.
Kurt's a good one. Kurt, oh, they don't have last names, but I'm open to it. Wagner is a very good. Kurt's a good one.
Wagner.
Kurt's a very good one. It's a solid. Yeah, sorry, forgot the last name. It's a very good suggestion.
It's the name to be
gradient because I feel like I've. Yeah, it's a good one. Ziggy is another one.
I just always like working that way. Like, throw something against the wall and then try to beat it, and then that's how you start.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. I think that's like one of the design principles. I don't know if it's a principle or whatever. It's just like a design, I guess, like challenge, and you go, okay, like. You make something and then you can go either way. You can go, okay, that's that. And then now, so say that's 100%, make it 75%, 50%, and 25% in terms of like how much is on the page. And then you can do it the other way where you go like, okay, well, that's 100%. So what is 125, 150, 200? So like basically making it more maximal. See what other, I like this, how you can change the things. That's cool. So I'm bouncing around like no tomorrow. Do you have any questions while I work?
Sebastian.
Yeah. Yes. I like that. So that's actually, I'm sorry that's better than Kurt so far, to be honest. I know you were set on Kurt.
I'm not precious. And then there's also Wilhelm. I'll get over it.
Willem is an excellent one. Yeah.
So there's a slight delay as well, by the way. I do have a question for you.
Okay.
Do you often work with clients on a design or commission brief? And then the follow-up question to that is like, what does that look like? Like at this stage in your career, you know, what does a typical kind of brief look like? How does it eventuate?
It's a good question. I think I mean, like 90% of the time they have seen something I've made before, or maybe even a few things, and that's what they want effectively. So they'll be like, here's these 4 things we saw of your work that we love. Like, can we kind of like make that us, like for us? Or, you know, sometimes it's an editorial and they might be like, here's the sentence we need you to write. And I'll make that. But again, they'll like show a visual reference, I guess. And so there's that. And then I guess some other times, I mean, I feel like I can always spot it if it's a bad brief, not to like start with a negative, but I think every now and then they just wanted a designer or an artist and they have no idea what your work looks like or care. And they brief you and it's just, you're just the wrong person. And in the beginning, I would say yes to that and then panic because they'd be like, can you please make like a mid-century inspired design? And I'd be like, what is mid-century? You know? And I've gotten a lot better at spotting that over time. So now when I get a job, I'm pretty picky about what jobs I say yes to, just because of time. And then when I say yes to it, I make sure that they'll send like a bunch of my work that they like. And then I'll kind of use that as the like the start point, but then I always try and evolve it like at least like 20% kind of thing, so that they'll get what they asked for, but in my mind it will have at least like been pushed forward a bit or been a bit weirder, or you know, I think it's always important to evolve your work and not just be doing the same thing forever. So I'm always going to do that, I think, to an extent, which is fun. But yeah, I think that's a good question. It does differ per you know, every project's different, but at the same time, like you know, it's always I forget what I'm saying now. It's hard to stay on track with a question and while working, but I'm enjoying the challenge of it. It always starts from somewhere, and they always pretty much know what they want, I guess, in some way. So I don't know if you can tell by now, like I just play for hours doing this. That's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, I've got some questions and stuff, so we can kind of go through some questions. So we'll see how you go.
Hit me.
The challenge of doing both at the same time. It's not as easy as it seems.
Yeah.
Do you ever get just jumping off what you're talking about, do you ever get pushback if you do go too weird? Like, do you ever get a client sort of just saying, oh, let's walk this back a little bit, or can we kind of tone this down? And then how do you kind of navigate that?
That happens all the time, like all the time, because it's like not I mean, I don't have like, I think some artists and designers have like a really complicated relationship with clients. I like clients, which is a weird thing to say, but it's like I don't know everything, you know, and for the most part, these people are like really good at their jobs and their opinion is valid, you know. So I kind of always try and like have respect for that person, but at the same time, like, yeah, it can be frustrating sometimes when they actively come to you and they're like, oh, we want to make something so weird or like really crazy, and they send references of like some crazier work, and then in the end you send them a crazy work and then they're like, actually, can you just like massively dull this down? So that can be really frustrating because you know, you're like, you asked for that. But I think again, it's like so many, I think in the beginning everyone always starts out with like quite a big ego, I think, and I probably had one, and I was like, no, they don't know what they're talking about. And now, like, after learning so many times, they were right, you know. Like, I would be like, no, this is the best thing ever, and they'd be like, well, actually, for our audience, this, that, and this, and they were right, you know. So you've also got to like remember that most of these projects are a collaboration, and I think while saying that, I think it's also really important to like stand up for your work, like, and know kind of your worth and your what like, at the end of the day, it's my career, and I have to like live with that career, and I have to like defend it and explain it and talk about it for the rest of my life. Like, I'm in this for the long haul. This isn't like a temporary career for me. So you have to really stand by that and everything I've made for forever, basically. So I think there's that. You've got to like think a bit about like, you know, how will this be? How will you know, this look in 10 years or whatever? So yeah, knowing when to push back and knowing when to listen to the client, I think is a pretty, only comes really with experience, I think. But I think turning the client into an enemy is hard for, I think, for people to always admit that the client's right. But yeah. Oops. So yeah, I have about 70 layers now, which is, see, we made 4. I mean, well, I'm starting a 4th one, but we've got like 3 pieces that I'm pretty happy with already. Just pretty much all based off the same like starting elements, and then bringing in new ones. So then, like, you know,
same starting point.
This will be this, yeah, and then this will be the starting point. This time I'm going to get rid of all the AI bits because I think we can make something without them. Next time, this will be the starting point. See how, like, it's so crazy how they don't even look like they've been made in the same session, but like through just kind of repetitiveness, they are, kind of thing, which is, I always think, quite interesting.
Yeah, if I looked at those pieces and didn't see how they were created, I wouldn't have thought that they would have any. They might have a relationship, but I wouldn't have thought that they were at all the same file.
No. Yeah, my files are less than desirable, to be honest. But you know, I just love mountains. I think I'm such
explain, like an. Sorry, the delay. I'm asking a question. I'm asking a long one, so hopefully it picks up. Can you explain what you mean by editorial? You've said editorial a few times and what that means.
Yeah.
Can you kind of expand on that?
Yeah, an editorial is normally for a publication. So it'll be like the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Sydney Morning Herald. I don't know if they do too many. So like a newspaper or a magazine or something like that, Monocle. And they basically, they want a visual to go with an article. So I did what's one I've done? I did one recently for We Present, which is it's part of WeTransfer, and they had a manifestation. So a very famous designer wrote a manifestation, and they wanted a visual to go with it. So I basically visualized this poster. Another one I did for Courier magazine, which is like a British kind of somewhat travel, somewhat lifestyle magazine. And it was like a very long kind of statement that a journalist had written. And I made like one, I think it's here somewhere. You might not be able to see it. I made one kind of really long type work. And so instead of just having, you know, like it written out, it just gives it it gives the story like a visual to go with it and to kind of feel a bit more exciting. And often, you know, like if there's always, if you look around on the internet, like there'll be really famous kind of New York Times covers. And it's often like, you know, if they're talking about a certain like political thing, and then they'll have a very strong visual to go with it, you know, as opposed to just, you can't have like the cover of a magazine that just says words. It has to say, or like have a visual to kind of, you know. So yeah, editorials are really fun. That they're normally very fast. It's like newspapers and things. So you often have very little lead time to do them, and with that comes like a great deal of freedom. But again, like back to the thing is like very often the people you work with are like, you know, top of their game, amazing editorial editors from like all over the world, and they know their stuff, you know, and they know what's going to cut through and what's going to excite people. So you've kind of got to listen to them when they say like, you know, that's not really the right thing for blah blah blah. But yeah, I really, really, really love doing editorials. I think there's something really nice about visualizing type and like adding a second. I hope, as like, you know, it's sad because I think budgets of printed or of like just any media is being cut a lot these days. And I really hope editorials stay like a viable thing, because I think they add so much value to you know, the written word. That's a weird thing to say. It sounds like I'm talking about the Bible or something, but kind of like like just like a story that someone might want to read, you know. So yeah, this is pretty productive. Definitely. It's not even an hour and I've made 4 bits of work.
great. You could come on Adobe Live more often. We'll just create some work together. Sit here and ask you questions.
It's quite productive. See, if I was in my studio alone now, I would have been procrastinating like crazy. Whereas, you know, when you know someone's watching and asking you questions, you're like, gosh, I have to actually make work. Like, it's quite distressing. So then there's one last thing I always do, and it's like I've made 4 in them, and I think that comes from, you know, their heritage, their upbringing, the place where they live, whether that's, you know, in England or in Australia or in Brazil or, you know, wherever you come from on the planet. Like, the food you eat, the visuals around you are very different, and all of these things inform you. The music you listen to, you know, you pick up bands that your family listens to or your people around you. So it's like you constantly taking on all of these visualizations when you're younger, and then you come into the world and you start figuring out what it is you like, and I think that's how you find your style, because it is quite literally a visualization of all the influences in your life. And I think sometimes designers get really stuck in this thing of, they go on Pinterest and because they got a new project and they find like the coolest thing they can find, and then they just kind of rip it. And I think that's so silly, because you've got all of this stuff in your head that you can draw on, all of these things in your life that you can use as inspiration. That's so much more exciting and so much more individual than going in, like, basically regenerating someone else's work that kind of already exists. And I in my opinion, often those projects don't cut through, because what's the point of them, you know? So I think, yeah, finding a style is like recognizing all the things in your life that have influenced what you like, you know? Like I'm if I go and buy a new car tomorrow and you go and buy a new car tomorrow, probably we will choose a different colored car. And why is that? Because, I mean, that's a crazy example when neither of us are buying cars, but you know what I mean? Like you will choose a different colored car to I. Just because you might have a favorite color that's blue and mine is yellow or black. Like, you just don't know. And that there's, instead of that being like a quick decision, and like when you ask me about using colors, it's like, it might seem really quick that I'd pick these colors, but I've been kind of forming my color palette since I was like 2 years old of what I like. So now I'm like, well, I like these 30 colors, and in 10 more years I'll like 40 colors, but it's always going to be the same colors, and you're just playing around with but I think for a new designer trying to find their style, you just have to experiment and play, and like that is the only way you will find your style, by working and making work and not limiting yourself or second guessing yourself, just making work, failing, putting it out in the world, and then it evolves. You know, I think my work looks very different now to when I first started this as like a professional career, and probably in 10 more years it will look even different. What about in 40 years? But I think at the essence of everything, it will still be somewhat similar, you know? So that's my advice on style. And see, now this is the 5th one. This is like this is the lineage between all of them, because it draws them all together, you know? I actually like all of this work. This is wildly productive. You never know when you start, like it can easily fail. This was time well spent.
Awesome. Look at that. How good. Do you
Any other
you
questions?
can pack it in when we're finished the live stream, then you can be like, there we go.
Yeah, I've done my work for the day. I'm going to the beach.
Final question, I think maybe this will take us out. This has been amazing.
Sure.
Watching this process, but final question is just any particular people that influence you. And I'm a bit sneaky because I think we've spoken about it before. I've heard you talk about it at some point. And I recognize a lot of the books in the background sometimes. But is there any particular artists or designers that influence you or have influenced you that you just want to give a shout out? People can check out if they're not familiar.
Yeah, sure. Okay, there's a lot of people from a long time ago that I've always liked. I obviously love Keith Haring. I think that's pretty obvious in my work. I think he's a genius. Was a genius. Yeah, and just how he made his work, also just how he lived his life, how he made such joyful work with such deep messages. I think that's incredible. I love Jean-Paul Goude, who's a French artist. A lot of people would know his work through, he worked a lot with Grace Jones, and did all of her album art, but has maintained like a very prolific career well into his, I think he's in his 80s now, and he's still working for Kenzo. So like a very cool work. And he creates these worlds almost, in these photo shoots that just feel so rooted in realism, but then feel so surreal at the same time. And I just love his work. And then I'm very influenced by musicians. Like I love MIA, obviously very much from a visual point of view, from a sonic point of view. And then I guess visual artists like now that I find really exciting. There's a Dutch studio. There are a couple who I'm fortunate to call them my friends, called Studio Yonk. And they make incredible like VR sculpture work. And I just think they're so cool. Like they really are pushing the boundaries of this relatively new technology. And I think it's very cool. And they're just the sweetest, loveliest people. And everything they make is so innocent and cool and amazing. I love them. And I love Kitasavi. He's an artist who makes, I mean, his work is 3D, but in my head, it's just like he, again, is creating these kind of like crazy worlds. We, again, did a collaboration together, which I was very grateful for. And I just love his work. Like, it's just so weird and cool and different. And I love that. I think I'm always the weirder, least accessible kind of, yeah, I mean, I'm like both ends of the spectrum. I'm either drawn to like Madonna, like the biggest pop star on the planet, or I'm drawn to like this weird person making like strange things in their bedroom. Like I don't have much of a middle ground. I'm like really, I feel like kind of both. But yeah, I think those are the people I look up to. There's like a bigger list, of course, but you know, I think those are the ones I probably think about at the moment anyway. And there's like every week I find a new person on Instagram and I'm like, whoa, that's so cool. Like they're the coolest person. But I think, and then I also just forget their names, but you know, I could find them on Instagram, but yeah, I think I'll always go back to like Keith Haring and Jean-Paul Goude and people like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for sticking through us with a couple of internet issues, but we got all the good stuff out of Kris, I think, which was awesome. Love watching this process. I'm glad it was productive for you as well as enjoyable for me. Catch yesterday's stream as well. Everything's available on Adobe Live on YouTube, and we'll see you all next week on the next Adobe Live. And Kris, thank you so much for hanging out with us on Adobe Live.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for everyone who watched.
Everyone, bye.